A new report finds school segregation is on the rise across the United States, even though it has been 65 years since the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional. The landmark Brown versus Board of Education case ordered schools to start integrating in 1954, launching a movement to help end racial inequality. But according to research conducted by the Civil Rights Project, a series of Supreme Court decisions in the 1990s led to the end of hundreds of desegregation orders and plans across the country. Gary Orfield joins us now from Los Angeles. He is a professor of education, law, political science, and urban planning at UCLA. He is also the co-director of the Civil Rights Project at the university. Gary, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
So, Gary, first, if you can explain what happened in the 1990s and how did these rulings affected integration in schools?
So there was a lot of progress especially from the 1960s through the late 1980s. We made the South into the most integrated part of the United States, thanks to court orders and desegregation plans, and we achieved a lot of educational gains. Beginning at the end of the 1980s and early 90s, we began to turn backwards. In 1991, the Supreme Court, in a case from Oklahoma City, said that desegregation was a temporary punishment, not a long-term requirement, and allowed school districts to return to segregated neighborhood schools and actually put pressure on court judges to end desegregation. Ever since that time, segregation's been increasing.
You know, I found this research to be really disappointing and surprising. I wonder, were any of the results surprising to you, that after 65 years after Brown versus Board of Education, that school segregation is actually getting worse?
No, it's been getting worse now for over a quarter century. People just aren't paying any attention to it because they don't intend to do anything about it. We really did learn that if you worked on it, you could achieve desegregation and it would have benefits. But there was a tremendous resistance to it, and when the court gave the go-ahead to end the desegregation plans, many places ended them. There were some school districts that wanted to remain desegregated that weren't allowed to by the courts as the courts turned more conservative.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Charlotte, North Carolina was a good example of that, where the school district actually spent $1 million saying, we're not done yet. We haven't made the schools equal enough yet. And our people like desegregation. And the court ordered them to terminate the plan and reinstate neighborhood schools that were highly segregated and very unequal.
Wow. So based on your research in this study, which racial groups suffer the most from school segregation?
Both African Americans and Latinos nowadays are in schools that are about 3/4 non-white, and they are schools that are unequal in many other respects. African Americans and Latinos are in schools that are overwhelmingly poor. On the other hand, whites and Asians are in schools that are middle class, and whites are in schools that are more than 2/3 whites, even though whites are less than half of the student population of the United States now.
Senator Kamala Harris tweeted Friday, quote, "Brown versus Board is personal to me. My class was only the second after busing integrated Berkeley public schools." Of course, busing legislation was debated on and off in the 70s. And as you know, it's the practice of transporting students within or outside their local schools to other schools to try to resolve segregation. What do you make of this approach, and has it actually helped?
It has helped a lot. In fact, there's powerful new research by Professor Rucker Johnson at Berkeley that shows that it makes a difference in not only how well you do, but how well you do in college, whether you finish, what kind of a job you get, what kind of income you have, and kind of what your health conditions are as adults. When you get connected into the mainstream of the society and get the privileges that come with excellent higher education, your life gets changed. And that relates to being in a school that's competitive, that has experienced teachers and administrators, demanding curriculum, and really gets you to college. Most of our highly segregated, impoverished schools don't do that. And so it's a tragic loss of talented, really dangerous loss.
And so in your opinion, and based on what you've seen, your research and all of this studying, what do you think needs to be done to reverse course to stop the rise of segregation in schools and turn the tide here?
Well, segregation is insidious and it's self-perpetuating. If your parents are segregated and they're inadequately prepared and they earn less, you're going to live in a lesser neighborhood, you're going to go to a lesser school, and you're going to be in the same path. We've got to decide we don't want to end up that way. Then there's many things you could do. And all of the things that we're talking about doing are not forcing students to attend other schools. We're setting up systems of choice that are designed to produce diverse schools and keep them diverse and to offer better educational options at the same time. There are lots of things that have been done and worked in magnet schools that we could do at a much larger scale.
Do you see any promise on the horizon when it comes to this issue?
Yes, I do see some promise. We have students protesting for desegregation in New York City, which is in the most segregated state in the United States, which is New York. We see a statewide lawsuit for desegregation going on under state law since the U.S. Supreme Court has shut down federal law. But we see them going on in New Jersey and Minnesota and proceeding in Connecticut as well. Lots of people are interested in doing this. There's some very interesting experiences with two-way immersion schools educating Spanish-speaking and English-speaking students in Texas, for example.
All right, we appreciate your time and your work. Gary Orfield, thank you.
Great to be with you, and I'm glad you're paying attention to this because we shouldn't celebrate it until we do something to realize its promise.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.